Now, as most of you know, the Avalanche were my previous favorite team before the Kraken started playing games for almost a decade, which is why I was not terribly excited about this matchup in the first round, because I know full well how a playoff series can give you reasons to hate whoever your team is playing, and I just didn't really want a reason to hate my old favorite team. And it took 4 games, but here we are. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken defeat the Colorado Avalanche 3-2 in overtime to tie the series at 2 and pick up their first ever playoff win at home. Which also means no matter what happens in Game 5, we're guaranteed a 6th game and a 3rd one in Seattle. Also, to be clear from the open, I don't hate the Avalanche as a team. They're still my second favorite team coming out of this game. But one guy in particular who may have been one of my old favorite players, yeah, there's gonna be a long road of redemption needed, but we'll be getting to that. From the jump, though, it cannot be overstated enough how massive of a win this was for the Kraken, not only because they prevent the Avalanche from going up 3-1 in the series, requiring them to win 3 straight to win the series against the defending champs, which would be bordering on impossible, but also getting that first ever playoff win at home, and not losing both of these home games with a chance to not even get a 3rd, depending on what would have happened in Game 5. And yes, I know in the series preview I said Avs in 6, but to be honest, all these games have been close, and if the Kraken play the same way they played in Game 4 in Game 5, I don't know if it's going to stay close, as the Kraken massively outplayed the Avalanche all game long, and it's honestly Georgiev who gets this game to overtime in the first place. And well, as we'll get to more later on, a large part of the reason for that is the Kraken doing an almost entire 180 on a few things that they had really been fighting through in the first 3 games, to say the least. Another good part of why the Kraken were so good in this game is that they did the things they'd done well, also well in this one, which includes getting off to that fast start for a 4th game in a row. And this time, much more like they did in games 1 and 2, it's all Kraken from puck drop as they immediately press into the offensive end, and it's Bjorkstrand who gets a couple of very good scoring chances off right away in the first minute. Eventually, the Kraken, although they don't score on either of those, they do end up drawing the early power play. Power play for the Kraken that, although it doesn't pick up right where they left off with an immediate goal like they had in that last power play at the end of Game 3 for that first ever franchise playoff power play goal, it does pick up in the aspect of getting immediate offensive zone pressure and a few shots off on net, which is more than we could honestly say about the power play up until that last chance that they got in the final minute of Game 3. But even in spite of that early pressure, again, the Avalanche keep it out of the net, and as soon as they get it cleared the first time, they really don't let the Kraken back into the offensive end and allow them to set up to get any more chances off on net, killing off the rest of this power play very effectively. Again, though, for whatever reason that honestly I can't even explain to you, as soon as they get back to 5-on-5, they get right back into the offensive end without much trouble at all, get set up, and cycle the puck around the offensive end from Tanev up to Larson, Larson across to Borgen, Borgen fires off the one-timer and buries it far side past the glove hand of Georgiev and into the net to give the Kraken the early 1-0 lead for the 4th game in a row, once again before the 5-minute mark of the first period. For Borgen, this is his first of the playoffs and first in his career in the playoffs, and for the Kraken as a whole, as they continue to show off their depth scoring by committee, this is the 10th goal of the playoffs for them, and they have 9 different goal scorers, with only Schwartz having 2 goals, both of those coming in Game 3. And to make matters even better for the Kraken, they're right back on the power play almost immediately after puck drop, following taking the 1-0 lead. Though, with that having been said, we did just go over how they've been better 5-on-5 than on the power play, and although they do eventually get set up once again on this power play, this time actually towards the end of it rather than the beginning, once again they're unable to score. The big downside there being that although the Kraken are up 1-0 early on in the first, they've now come up empty on 2 power plays, and you just know that the next call is probably going to go in favor of the Avalanche, because that's just how officiating works. That having been said, well, again, we are kind of expecting that the refs are now looking to make the next call against the Kraken, with them having gotten the first 2 because of the unfortunate state of officiating in the NHL. I mean, we heard literally on a hot mic just a couple years ago that the refs do look for these either make-up or even-up calls. I don't think we were expecting to literally watch them look for it live in time, as Yanni Gourde, being the tenacious forechecker that he is, chases a chip in down behind the Avalanche net where two Avalanche players meet him on either side. Eventually, the puck ends up out of that scrum going back the way Yanni Gourde came, and as he tries to chase it down, he is directly interfered with and held up by, I'm pretty sure it was Byram, from going to chase the puck down, which probably should have been an interference call, and in the regular season, I think probably would have been against Byram, but that's not called. Whatever, we've seen things not get called that would have been penalties otherwise because it's the postseason. But even as Byram stands all the way up in front of Gourde, still holding him in place, preventing him from chasing this play down as the Avalanche have now gotten to that loose puck and are taking it back down towards the Kraken end. Eventually, Byram starts pushing Gourde, eventually shoving him a couple times in the face. Now, Gourde is pushing back, but there's a ref standing literally next to both of them watching this whole thing unfold. So at this point, Gourde kind of figures, well, he's either going to call nothing or he's going to get us both for roughing. So understandably frustrated by everything that's just happened, Gourde decides what the heck and just starts throwing punches at Byram. Byram responds by throwing punches right back. But the ref, again, standing there having watched this whole thing unfold, galaxy brains his way into just giving Yanni Gourde the roughing call and the Avalanche the power play. Again, if this is the regular season, none of this extra stuff afterwards probably even happens, as Byram's probably headed to the box for 2 minutes on interference. But it's the playoffs, they let more things go than usual, so they start throwing punches and you send both of them to the box for roughing. There is no world in which this can ever be correctly called as one guy going to the box, and if you are going to call it that way, there's no way that Gourde is that one guy. But because it's the officials and they like to make sure that one team doesn't get too many more power plays than the other team, they've got to find that even up call, and they watch this play happen long enough that they find a way to make sure that Gourde is that one guy that goes to the box, and the Avalanche can have their one power play so it doesn't look like one team's getting favored. Now, I understand that that might seem like a biased take coming from a Kraken fan, but as I try to make this understandable for fans that might be newer to the game, that's really the only way to explain it. There's no way by the rules that any of this crap makes sense, and certainly no other way that you can explain just Gourde going to the box. But I guess if you're a new fan watching the playoffs and trying to understand hockey for the first time and the rules that go along with it, I don't know. Best of luck to you. All I can say is that the rules, well, the Kraken are a Jerry Bruckheimer-owned team, and he made Pirates of the Caribbean, so all I can tell you is the rules are more of guidelines than actual rules. Sorry, as a quick aside, I had to just double check. I was pretty sure, but I had to double check that I was right, that Jerry Bruckheimer did help make Pirates of the Caribbean, and I was right, but I didn't know that he also helped produce Con Air, which is a fantastic film, one of Nicolas Cage's best. Anyway, getting back to the game, to be fair, especially relative to the rest of the series in these playoffs, and a couple in particular, through the first 3 games, I had thought that this series had been pretty well officiated. Sure, they've definitely been letting more go than they would in the regular season, but that's again to be expected. Still, I guess it was just a matter of time before things really took a turn for the worse, and they certainly did here in Game 4, as if you think that what happened here with Gourde was bad, boy oh boy were we in for a nasty surprise in just the next few minutes, as the Avalanche get this power play and at the start of it are getting outshot already by the Kraken 10-1, so they eventually do get a couple more shots off. Grubauer comes up with a couple of pretty big saves, and eventually Beniers sets McCann loose for an odd man break. McCann skates in, takes the shot, and it's saved by Georgiev, immediately deflecting out of play and into the netting behind him, eventually falling between that netting and the boards to some lucky fan who gets the puck. But as it's falling to that fan behind the boards, McCann, who is just kind of now curling away from the play along the boards in the corner, looking up at the sky, disappointed that he wasn't able to score, or I don't know, maybe he was looking at the scoreboard to see how Georgiev was able to make the save. Either way, the puck is out of play and has been now for a couple of seconds. McCann is looking to the sky, not anywhere towards the ice or anything coming towards him. Makar skates right up and changes this series immediately as he takes an incredibly unacceptable, dirty, scummy, cowardly hit on McCann. The only part of it that's even somewhat passable is it's shoulder to shoulder. Either way, McCann doesn't see it coming and has no reason to expect it to, as, again, the puck has been out of play for a couple of seconds and he's not looking at the play. But Makar lays into him anyway, shoulder to shoulder, and McCann, again, not braced for a hit that he shouldn't be expecting coming, goes into the board head first and then falls to the ice again head first. His head, a couple of hard collisions there, and it was very hard to watch him trying to get up from this. Tries to push himself up. Eventually his glove comes off and then he's still trying to push himself up with his bare hand on the ice. isn't able to do so. The trainers come over, eventually doubled over. He makes his way to the bench with help from, I think it was Tanev, and the trainer goes down the tunnel, and we weren't going to see him again. Hackstall has already said he's out for game 5, and if he had to guess, probably longer than that. Meanwhile, you would probably think that there would be an immediate penalty for this blatantly illegal hit from Makar, but no penalty is called by the refs until they see that McCann is clearly actually injured and not just acting this up. So they decide to converge while McCann is getting attention in the corner from the trainers, eventually coming to the conclusion to call it a 5-minute major, which is the appropriate call. So again, it is an automatic review because it's a major call, but you're thinking that maybe with this going to review, and again, this being a clearly illegal, dirty hit from Makar well after the puck has been out of play and already fallen to some fan in the stands behind the boards, that this could end up being a 10-minute misconduct and Makar could end up getting kicked out of this game. But while after review, they do end up changing the call from just a 5-minute major, it's not adding the misconduct. They instead change it to a 2-minute minor for interference. I don't know what to tell you here. It's just blatantly the wrong call. I've got no explanation. The refs just galaxy braining their way from one terrible call to another, and now the Kraken are out their leading point scorer in the regular season, or at least leading goal scorer anyway, in McCann, the 40-goal scorer, first one in franchise history, and while he hasn't scored yet in the playoffs, now he might not get a chance to at all. Meanwhile, the guy that hurt him is not only going to get just a 2-minute minor for his, again, cowardly, clearly dirty hit well after the play, he's going to get that 2-minute minor, not because he made the wrong call and you can't review it because it's a 2-minute minor, but because they came to that 2-minute minor decision through a review of a 5-minute major, which was already the bare minimum call that should have been made. Now, yes, there is the possibility that after the fact, the NHL could end up looking at this in the day off, and they probably already have and come to a conclusion if they're going to at the time you're watching this video. They could still end up reviewing this again and suspending Makar for this hit or punishing him in some way. But given the track record that the NHL player safety has with the Kraken players over the course of the season, and having no interest whatsoever in protecting Kraken players from clearly dirty hits, as they've shown on 2 occasions throughout the course of the season, namely Lomberg's hit on Schultz in Florida that cost Schultz a couple of games due to concussion. Lomberg, if I'm not mistaken, did get a misconduct and kicked out of that game, but got no further punishment from the league, not a suspension, not a fine, not anything, not even a review for that boarding call that again cost Schultz. And then, infamously, the hit of Tyler Myers on Matty Beniers hit open ice that not only was, again, if I'm not mistaken, just a 2-minute minor in game, but also received not even a review from the league and no further punishment for Myers, while Beniers missed 2 games due to concussion. So, yeah, not expecting the league to give any help to the Kraken here or any justice when it comes to protecting Kraken players from dirty hits. Especially when you hear the bullcrap reason that Hackstall was given from the officials after the fact as to why this was downgraded to a 2-minute minor from a 5-minute major. That being, not that it was a shoulder-on-shoulder hit, which, to be fair, again, Makar does get McCann shoulder-on-shoulder and not shoulder-to-head, which is what immediately draws those major calls. No, the officials' reasoning, or at least what they gave Hackstall anyway for the downgrade, was that they still felt like the puck was in play enough that Makar was just trying to make a play on a guy he thought could have had the puck. Which, again, as we've mentioned, the puck was not only having already hit the netting seconds earlier, and by seconds I don't mean like bang bang, I mean we have a good 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi between when the puck hits the netting, a whistle should have happened, and McCann takes this hit from Makar. Not only has that time already elapsed, but again, the puck is already behind the boards and in the hands of a fan when Makar lays this hit. I mean, I suppose it still could have been in play from the aspect of there still could have been a couple of fans fighting over who would get it as it had fallen at their feet in the stands, but it certainly wasn't still on the field of play or in the ice surface anywhere and hadn't been for a few seconds. So there's no way for the officials to have an excuse to think that Makar could have been making a play for the puck here, as, yeah, again, it had been gone long ago. At least the good news for the Kraken out of this is that it does kill off the rest of that Avalanche power play that should have never happened in the first place. And it will give the Kraken about a minute of power play on the other end, which thankfully they do end up capitalizing on, as Sprong just does his sprong thing, finds a puck, skates around until he finds a shooting lane, fires off that shot, and beats Georgiev once again glove side to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead, and the first power play goal that actually matters for something, with that one at the end of game 3 kind of being in garbage time. Plus, for what it's worth, which honestly I do think is a lot, after having watched one of their teammates and best players in McCann leave the ice injured after a dirty hit, and then Sprong scoring on the ensuing power play, the Kraken are definitely re-energized into this game and are able to get and maintain momentum throughout the rest of this first period. And unlike what happened with a couple of their quick starts in games 1 and 3, they don't allow the Avalanche to get another footing and get back into this game, really with the Kraken dominating this first period from start to finish, outside of that little window of about a minute of power play that the Avalanche did get. And even outside of what the players on the ice were feeling, the crowd was really into this game on top of the 2-0 lead, absolutely laying into the officials and Cale Makar anytime he touched the puck the rest of this game. And I would have to hope continuing that when it comes to game 6 back in Seattle. And I don't just mean a few scattered boos here and there the next couple of times Makar touches the puck. No, he was getting the full treatment, a full 17,000 plus people booing him relentlessly every time he so much as tapped the puck for a split second, to the point where I think it was sometime in the third period, there's a TV break and the in-arena PA entertainment is playing Queen. And as soon as they come back from that break, the puck is dropped. The crowd continues to sing along with the Queen song, filling in the breaks, right up until they're immediately interrupted as Makar touches the puck, and they stop singing Queen to immediately start booing him. So you know it has to be bad when fans stop singing Queen to go right back to letting a guy know that he's no longer welcome. Anyway, we do get to the first intermission with the Kraken leading 2-0, and as we start the second, they're actually going to be on the power play as there's just a whole lot more chaos at the end of the period. A number of fistfights going on the ice, not full-on fights as the officials and linesmen were trying to get a handle on everything. They weren't able to get quite in between everybody as Gordon, I think it was Rantanen, managed to escape and letting each other have it right out in front of the Avalanche bench, which the fans, being that the rest of it was getting split up, were very into Gord standing up for that right in front of the Avalanche bench again. Eventually, after that's broken up, seeing Gord off the ice with a very loud Yanni, Yanni chant going into the locker room. The Kraken again getting that power play to start the second, which they don't score on, but do get momentum starting out the second period. Again, just picking up where they left off at the end of the first. However, midway through the second, it's yet another Kraken press in the offensive end, an extended stay by the Wennberg line, the second line for the Kraken, where the Avalanche just do the Avalanche thing. It's the top line out on the ice that was pinned in, so a great shift from the Wennberg line to pin that top line of the Avalanche into their defensive end. But they get a breakout, and it's just a beautiful passing play through the neutral zone and offensive end that unfortunately does end up culminating in an Avalanche goal, as Rodriguez passes it out to one side to McKinnon, who then gets it all the way back to the other side for Rantanen, and he beats Grubauer 5-hole. I know there's a lot of arrows going on here on the screen, but it's just a good tic-tac-toe pass that gets through the entire Kraken defense, getting Rantanen that open shot. He's able to beat Grubauer before he can close up the pads to bring the Avalanche to within 1, even though they're still getting massively outshot by the Kraken. But at least to Seattle's credit, they don't allow the Avalanche to build any momentum out of this, and in fact, press back the other way, trying to regain the 2-goal lead. They're not able to do so, and just a couple minutes later, as the Kraken are in their end of the ice and trying to get back going the other way once again, Rantanen just kind of makes a fool of the officials as he holds Borgen's arm to him with Borgen behind him, and then puts the other arm up in the air to make it look like Borgen's holding him. And of course, because these officials have no idea what the heck is going on the ice most of the time in this game, they call Borgen, who's being held by Rantanen, for holding and send him to the box, the Avalanche to the power play, and I mean, it was coming at some point. The Kraken, after having killed off, honestly, I don't know how many power plays it was in a row for the Avalanche to start this series, they come 3 seconds away from killing off another one, when eventually one more shot from Rantanen, who, to be honest, early on in this power play had Grubauer dead to rights but made one pass too many. This time he doesn't make that extra pass, instead puts it into the back of the net past Grubauer to tie the game at 2. And so after a nice play to get the first goal for the Avalanche and then a garbage call once again from the officials to get them on the power play for the second goal. We go to the second intermission with the score tied at 2, even with the Kraken massively outshooting the Avalanche and really outplaying them all the way up to this point. Outshooting them, though, 30-14.
And just to be clear, because I know there's going to be people who are seeing this as just a homer take from a fan who doesn't like calls going against his team, really the bigger issue here is with the consistency or complete lack thereof of officiating in this game. Because to be perfectly honest, there were plenty of things that could have gotten called against the Kraken later on in this game that didn't. I mean, I can think of one particular on Dunn where he blatantly tripped and interfered with the guy and there was no call. So really this just comes down to the officials having no rhyme or reason to what they're calling and what they aren't, other than they're looking for calls at certain times and not calls on others, which then leaves the fans, for one thing, not having any idea what to expect, but more importantly, the players and coaches also having no idea what to expect as far as what's going to get called from one shift or 1 second to another.
Once again, though, in the third period, the Kraken do end up getting the better start to the period, but it doesn't really end up lasting this time, as this third period was pretty even all the way through. I think the Kraken do end up shooting the Avs in the period 9-7, if I'm not mistaken, even with the Avalanche having the lone power play of the period, which the Kraken did a pretty good job of killing off. But all in all, it was pretty back and forth, and compared at least to the first two periods, low event third. So we end up getting to overtime for the first time in this series, and we do so with the Kraken desperately needing this win, not just because if the Avalanche win it, they take that suffocating 3-1 series lead, but also because the Kraken have again dominated this game start to finish, and if they are to end up losing it after all that, it really, I think, squashes what little hope there would be that the Kraken could come back with 3 straight wins after having played their best game of the series and still coming up short. And fortunately, who knows if it was the fact that the Kraken managed to prevent the Avalanche from taking the lead in the third period after going into a third period in a row with the score tied, or if it was them getting to overtime, which even if this is now 5-on-5 overtime, and in the regular season it was 3-on-3, overtime was kind of them most of the season. It continues to be here as the Kraken end up getting a power play early on as Schwartz gets a breakaway, but is tripped as he takes the shot. Fortunately, the officials see this one and correctly take the tripping call. Also, low-key, probably an extra good thing that Schwartz gets this shot off as he's getting tripped on the breakaway, because if he doesn't get the shot off, there's a decent chance that he's awarded a penalty shot, and penalty shot or shootout, the Kraken have yet to score on one of those this entire season. So instead, the Kraken get the power play, which, although the power play hasn't necessarily been a strength either, it seems to have been heating up lately with that power play goal at the end of game 3, and then already a power play goal in this one, plus a power play that even outside of that goal had been looking better in the other chances that they had. And wouldn't you know it, once again on the power play for the Kraken, it all starts by a circling shot from Daniel Sprong that is blocked out in front by Cale Makar. Boo. I know, but luckily for the Kraken, that bounces out to the side for Jordan Eberle, who might have had a shot here, but instead opts for the better option, getting it up to Schwartz in the low slot right at the top of the crease, who has Georgiev dead to rights for the game winner. He fires off that shot, but it does go off the skate of Taves, another block in front of Georgiev. Once again, though, bouncing right back to Eberle, and Eberle fires off the shot and buries it into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 3-2 win, and taking game 4, tying the series at 2, and getting that first ever home win in the playoffs, and doing it in overtime with the sudden death game winner. Woo! Let's go!
And just to add the cherry on top of all of it, guess which player for the Avalanche, other than Georgiev obviously, this puck goes through from Eberle to get into the back of the net? Yup, Cale Makar. Hey Jordan, bit of a two-part question here. First off, even with everything going on in this game, officiating and otherwise, and let's be honest, blowing another 2-goal lead even while massively outshooting the Avalanche, did you still in fact manage to win it? And second part, even though everybody outside of Seattle was expecting you guys to lose this series in 4 or 5 games, have you now in fact tied the series 2 games apiece? He says yes. Weird, he actually usually talks more than this. And so, just like that, in case I haven't already mentioned it, the series is now tied 2 apiece as we go back to Colorado for what is effectively now a 3-game series, where, yeah, 2 of them are on the road, but again, the Kraken have played better on the road and the Avalanche worse at home. So who knows, maybe that goes in Seattle's favor. We'll just have to see in games 5, 6, and maybe even 7. And as far as finding hope for the Kraken to win 2 of those last 3 games, well, you don't have to look too much farther than the takeaways from this game, where the Kraken did much better in a lot of the things that had been bugging them or been issues for them in the first 3 games of the series. First, these shots on goal, where we've mentioned a couple of times that the Kraken were one of the best teams, in fact, the second best team in the NHL when it came to shots against per game, but had been allowing the most shots per game in the playoffs through the first 3 games. In Game 4, though, they limit the Avalanche to just 22 shots on goal while getting 43 themselves. So, again, pretty dominant when it comes to shot volume. And that had been something that had been pretty even throughout the series, with the Avalanche even getting the edge in most games and getting well more than the 22 shots they got in this game in those first 3. Secondly, a massive improvement for the Kraken in the faceoff circle, where they had lost that battle in each of the first 3 games, and it wasn't really all that close. But in Game 4, they win 8 more faceoffs than the Avalanche, and win more than the Avalanche where it was most important, in their end of the ice. Something that had been the biggest problem of all through the first 3 games, as they'd given up 4 goals directly off of lost faceoffs in their end of the ice. And then there's the power play, where the Kraken power play actually looked like a power play in this game, even scoring twice, including that game winner in overtime. So who knows if it was that one that they scored in garbage time of Game 3 that got things going, but it definitely looked like an entirely different power play in this game for the Kraken, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come in the rest of this series. There's also the fact that the Kraken set a franchise record in hits in this game with 52. I will say, having listened to where some of those hits were awarded, some of them were a bit generous, but another very physical game between these 2 teams, with the Avalanche picking up 37 themselves. And I definitely would not expect that to get any lighter in the last 3 games, especially considering what went down in this one with the injury to McCann that the Kraken are still going to be looking to make up for, as well as plenty of other things. Just the more you play against a team, the more there's going to be some animosity developed between the guys you faced for now 4 games in a row. But with all that said, and since it's already very late, or honestly very early at this point, already an hour and a half past when I'm usually finishing things up at the latest after games, with the overtime and then press conferences going later than usual, and let's just be honest, my train of thought not all the way there, and having left the station a while ago, as you can tell. We're just going to get right to the Kraken 3 stars, where the first one is Jordan Eberle. Obviously, it has to be. He has the game winner, finishing it for the Kraken, getting their first ever playoff home win. If we haven't mentioned that, we have a few times, but it bears repeating. Second star, Will Borgen. What a game from him. He's honestly had a pretty good series. There's been a couple of plays here and there, but when it comes to physicality and the ramping up of that physicality in the playoffs, Borgen has definitely been one of the bigger contributors to that for the Kraken, and continues to be very good even against Colorado's best when it comes to separating them from the puck, especially the Kraken's end of the ice. Plus, he gets his first goal in the playoffs in this game, getting the Kraken on the board to start the game off. And then the third star is going to be a guy who I'm not sure he gets on the score sheet. He might have gotten an assist, but I'm going with Yanni Gourde. I mean, what more can be said about Yanni Gourde? We all know how much he means to this team. Clearly the heart and soul of it, even if he isn't always the leading scorer and getting on that score sheet, even if he isn't always leading the most hits, though he did have 5 hits in this game, which is still third on the forward end to Tanev, who had 6, and Tolvanen, of all players, who led the Kraken with 8 in this game. Still, Gourde, a fantastic game, and just doing all those Yanni Gourde things. Fantastic on the forecheck, a huge bounce back game on the forecheck for the Kraken, where they've been kind of held at bay as far as forechecking is concerned by the Avalanche in games 2 and 3. But Gourde comes back with a vengeance here, and especially spurred on, I'm sure, by the frustration of how he got sent to the box, but then also seeing McCann leave almost immediately afterwards. A couple of other guys worth mentioning, obviously Daniel Sprong, who gets 2 points in the game. Schwartz had yet another game, probably the MVP of the playoffs if I had to pick one so far for the Kraken. Grubauer definitely has an argument there as well. And also Carson Soucy had a quietly really good game for the Kraken. Again, not on the score sheet for him, but for a guy that had a tougher regular season, he's had a pretty good playoffs, especially with Vince Dunn kind of having a bit of a tougher run here in the postseason so far. If Dunn can get going, though, and the Kraken can continue to build off of what they did here in Game 4, winning this series is definitely not out of the question. As always, though, I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section below, who your 3 stars would be. What do you think the Kraken do here now without McCann for the next couple of games, if not longer? And maybe weighing in on if you had to pick one between Makar and Tyler Myers, which one we're feeling worse about at the moment. I think recency bias would probably give Makar that one, but Makar is going to definitely be joining Tyler Myers in the, well, on the list of Kraken fans, we'll put it that way. Anyway, if you made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to support the channel. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken! Oh, and by the way, we will be streaming for Game 5 on Wednesday.